Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Community Justice Response Committee. It is Monday, December 5th, 2022. And our first item of business is our guiding principles, which we've been looking at the last couple of weeks. And as far as I know, they're fine, except April, no one seemed to quite hear exactly what it was that you wanted included.
It's okay. I appreciate you. I'm following up on it. There were 3 words, or at least concepts I wanted to add, specifically transparency, collaboration, which I think Commissioner Thomas was asking where to place those, which I think is a great question. I think when we're talking about transparency and collaboration, we should be doing that in all of our tasks. So I think those should be standalone.
Yeah.
And then in terms of public safety, I think there's a couple places we could do that. You could either put a standalone for public safety, or for the very first guiding principle, it was treatment over incarceration. And I would just ask when appropriate, or a language like that to assist.
To taking into account public safety.
Yes.
Yes. Would you possibly be willing to write up more or less what your ideas are and
Absolutely.
send them to me, and I will add them to what we have so far, and in the future I will include them on I think it'll have to be the back of the agenda, so that hopefully there'll be a general recognition of what it is that we're looking to do. And is there anything else about that? Does anyone have any other ideas about what our principles should be, or any changes you'd like to see? Jen.
Don't know if it's necessarily a change to the guiding principles, but some of the members of the public also mentioned that a lot of people are new here, as we see, and they're not very familiar with all of us and who we are, plus those that are watching, that'll watch later or are currently watching. So I was thinking either 1 or 2 things. Well, today we probably should just go around in the room and just announce who we are. And then if we have some members of the committee on the Zoom to announce it, and then maybe in the future have like name tags for us so that we can all know who we are to the public.
Yes. Courtney, are name tags something you can arrange, or? Okay, great. Thank you. And yes, that's a very good idea. And I'm sorry, I tend to be awfully informal, so I haven't used people's official titles very much. I was brought up a Quaker, and Quakers don't do that very much. But I am Lee Jones. I am County Commissioner and the chair of this committee. And I guess we'll go counterclockwise.
Hi, everybody. My name is Peter Iverson. I am on the Monroe County Council, and I just real quick wanted to direct your attention to the bottom of the agenda. There's a website, and all of the members of this committee are listed on that website for your reference as well.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Crossley, and I am Monroe County Council for District 4.
Hello, I'm Kate Wiltz, and I'm on Monroe County Council, currently serving as the president.
Sam Crow, jail commander.
Karen Runback and Michael Hunt, we're from the Public Defender's Office.
Lori Kelly, health administrator. Darcy Fawcett, judge, the Circuit Court 9.
April Wilson, felony deputy prosecutor from the prosecutor's office.
Catherine Stafford, I'm judge of Monroe Circuit Court 4.
Thank you. Yes, we do. Julie, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Julie Thomas, Monroe County Commissioner.
All right, thank you. And Kara?
Judge Crothy, Monroe Circuit Court 8. And someone in my household has COVID, so I'm just hanging in the virtual land today. So thanks.
And I'll point out that we also have Public Defender Michael Hunt, who's kind of in the corner here. I think Karen is actually speaking for the public defenders. All right. And thank you, Jen. That was a good point. Our next agenda item is a discussion of treatments. And Peter actually suggested a few different people we might want to talk to or things we could do. And basically, I'm wondering what people's ideas are for treatment. But I think I think there are some things that happen through programming that aren't actually treatment. And so I think we need to think about those things also. And has anyone put any thought into this so far? Or maybe I'll start out by telling some of what I am very interested in. And I'm not an expert in treatments. So basically that's something that I will leave to people who are much more expert than I am. I do think that it's important to have programming for reentry within the jail for reentry. I would like to see programming for possible employment as people come out of jail. And I also think it could be helpful for some life skills programming in the jail. And I'm sure there are many other things that we haven't thought up yet, but I'll reverse order and go clockwise. Catherine?
As a family court judge, one of the problems I often see with parents who are incarcerated is a lack of contact with their children and a lack of parenting skills and classes that can be in the jail. I certainly respect, and Commander Crowe and I have had a chance to talk to you very briefly about that does represent a security concern. So I certainly want to defer to his expertise on that, but I would love to see something that will provide either some supervised parenting time for people who are incarcerated where that's appropriate, and or some of the skills-based classes that would help with parents.
Yeah, I think actually parenting classes is something that's really a good idea. And I think the youth shelter could probably help us with that. They have some programs like that. April.
I'm really excited we're talking about treatment, and I do have some questions. I guess one thing I think we should consider is what approach we want to take. For example, when I'm thinking about the criminal process, if our goal is to try to find places for support or to divert people from going back into the jail or being able to be released from the jail, then I think we need to kind of map or outline the places where those are occurring. For example, when someone picks up a criminal case, they're going to have a bail review. First, they're going to have an initial hearing. And there's going to be a pretrial release evaluation. There's going to be maybe some arguments about release at that time. There's also going to be one at a bail review. If they're still in jail, then subsequent bail reviews. But once they're out of jail, there'll be pretrial. And the question is there supportive services there that we're not meeting? And then once they're on probation or any type of community corrections program, are there services that we have, but maybe need further support? For example, I think there's some treatment options that we have where the waiting list is pretty lengthy and they're wonderful services. But if someone's released from the jail and it takes 3 months to be connected to them and they are suffering from mental health issues, I think we have some real connection issues we need to work on. And that's the last one I wanted to mention is mental health is one in particular I know that we're really struggling with. Being able to connect people timely to their medications, which is really important. You can get someone stabilized, but if they can't get their medication or can't get to a provider to get the prescription, that's causing a lot of problems in different segments. So I'm interested to hear what ways you'd like to approach it, and I'm open to it. If you want to go with specific intercepts and talk about where we're struggling, I'm happy to approach it anyway, but I just thought we could maybe think about it, how we want to approach those issues.
Thank you. I think connecting it to the intercepts is a really good idea because I think what we're really kind of aiming for is a continuum of care. And by connecting it to the intercepts, we kind of work it through the continuum. Darcy?
I mean, there are lots of programs, treatment programs that I've released defendants to. Probation has helped the courts and given quite a few treatment providers that they have gone to and reviewed and met with to make sure that the treatment programs are effective. So I think working with probation to see the programs that they've worked with in the past who've been helpful and successful completion and then sustaining that sobriety, I think is a good thing. So I think it would be wise to kind of reach out to people within the probation department because that's our go-to in terms of helping us find resources for people.
Thank you. Yeah, I think probation is going to be pretty important. And I know probation has been collecting data longer than any of the rest of us and has been working on a evidence-based plan. So, which is probably, well, is definitely something we're going to want to be looking at. Laurie, do you have anything?
Well, I really love the idea of the mental health and the substance use programs. In addition, I like how you spoke of life skills and employment programs. I think that those are really going to be crucial programs that we could be offering.
Thank you. Karen, do you have any thoughts on this?
I don't think we have much to add. We are supportive of any and all services. in the jail,
Okay.
Period.
Great. Thank you. Sam, what you have to say is probably going to be very relevant.
Well, I think it's already been said in this, in these meetings, but jail programs may not be the best thing. You know, I think we need to work on diversion before they come to the jail, especially with mental health. And I think that's a key thing is getting them someplace where they can get the help they need with people that are trained to do it, rather than putting them in jail where they may be delayed getting their medication until we can get the records back and things like that. But we receive very little training in mental health. So we're not the people to do training for mental health. That needs to be somebody that's trained. So therefore the diversion pre-arrest. As far as other programs in the jail, I agree 100% with what you said. Life skills, work-related things, simple things like how to fill out a resume, how to dress appropriately for an interview, who to take with you to an interview. You don't take your girlfriend and your child with you. Just basic things like that. And that's something that we've tried to work on, but unfortunately we've got stalled a little bit. But I think there's a lot of different things that we could do in the jail. And I could talk all day about it, but we just don't have the time right now.
Yeah, I think it's not very fair to ask jailers to encompass all these other problems. Kate.
Of course, everything listed, I've been trying to write everything down and it's all great. And I'm supportive of all of the things that have been mentioned. I might add housing support for both pre and post incarceration, but especially as you release someone, making sure they have a place to go. That'd be it for me.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's important. Jen?
So I have a laundry list, but in respect to time, I am glad that we are talking about treatment and shifting our conversation to treatment, because I think the biggest thing that, again, as I said before, that we all are wanting to do is how do we get people from coming into the system in the first place? And what are those tools that we need to have put in place for folks to not be, or to be diverted from jail before they get there in the first place? So, and looking at the agenda, and I had suggested a couple of these things. Somebody just said here a few minutes ago that, sometimes we have a 3-month waiting period for those that are going into treatment facilities. And with everything that's going on with mental health, substance use, a lot of other things, we understand that, the problem is very dire and severe. So I'm putting, my council hat on as the financial body of the county. And I'm thinking in terms of, you know, the funding that we have with ARPA. How do we use some of that funds that we have been given from the federal government to make sure that we are, you know, using those appropriately as a boost to health? And so one of the things that I think that we can do is use a nice amount of ARPA funds to go to some of these treatment facilities, which is listed, you know, New Leaf, New Life, Silver Living, and other places as well. But I also think that most importantly, the biggest thing in terms of treatment facility is before we move forward with any of this, we all have are somewhat knowledgeable of those things. But I would really think that it would be nice in future meetings to have those that are part of those particular treatment facilities and whatnot be a part of the discussions where they can educate us further, so that we understand, you know, what is needed, not just what we are assuming what is truly needed. As we had heard from past meetings, and I have my notes here on my computer and lots of notes all over the place here. People keep talking about, you know, being severely underfunded. And that seems to be the biggest issue is how do we get those organizations to not be so severely underfunded, but to be funded so that they can help a lot more. And we don't have the waits and, you know, different types of things like that. So I think that is the biggest thing. And then I also agree with Kate in terms of housing. Housing is justice, you know, transitional halfway housing for people in the process of getting back to their feet and being rehabilitated. And then, of course, most importantly, being able to work with probation. Those are the biggest things in terms of treatment that I would see.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. Peter?
So the way I think about this is I try and be as evidence-based in my thinking as possible, because I think I don't have the lived experiences that I think would be informative in the situation. And so I know that, as you stated earlier, that our community corrections team has been using a lot of evidence-based practices. And one of the documents that I look at is a document that's put out called Diversion to What in September of 2019. It was published by the Basildon Center for Mental Health Law. And that was in Ms. Hill's report. And they go through a lot of the evidence-based practices that they would recommend for, you know, how do we look at mental health services to prevent, you know, incarceration. And a lot of the things that they recommend based on the evidence are things that we've already discussed here, such as housing support, peer services in the jail, supportive employment is something that we've discussed as well. But there's things that are happening at Centerstone that I think are really important. I think that we can bolster as well. One of those is called the Assertive Community Treatment, or ACTS teams. And I think that can be helpful. And I know that there's also a forensic assertive community team that probation departments utilize across the nation too. Those all can be funded. And I just really quickly want to point out that as Councilmember Crossley talked about ARPA funding, that we have reached out to Centerstone, and Centerstone sent us a 3-page document of services they provide that they need funding for, in addition to what we already know is going to be happening in the legislative session coming up. And I think that's going to be something that we would want to have at this table, is having legislative updates on what this biennial budget session is going to be doing to provide additional resources to counties.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. And I do want to say about the ARPA funds that while I certainly would like to see them directed toward treatment and programming and all, it's only a temporary source of funding.
Right.
So that's something we need to keep in mind. It's good for capital expenses and things like that, but unfortunately can't be long-term support. Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah.
That's why I always use first names.
Yeah, sorry. I agree with a lot that's been said. I think I'm very concerned about funding because there's just this idea out there, you throw money at it, it'll get better. And we know that's not true. You're just throwing money at it. And I think the people in Monroe County deserve better. So I think we need to be really focused and very clear about how we're spending money, what it's on, what it's for, and what other funding mechanisms there are out there, rather than always looking to the county. The county cannot be a mental health provider for the county, and we just can't afford it. I'm sure my council colleagues will agree, to become the sole funding source. It's just impossible. As much as we'd like to do it, we can't do it. So we have to understand, yes, the range of programming available, the ways to implement that programming. I think that anything we do inside the jail, we should ensure is mirrored in the community at large and offered. We can use Medicaid funding, for example, but to have a place where people can go so they're at intercept zero and they don't become involved in the system at all. If we can help them with substance use disorder treatment. And I think the mental health issue is huge and obviously very connected with substance use disorder. But I think that's a much bigger issue, and I don't know how we should approach that. And I'm sure that's something where we're going to continue to make changes and continue to address issues. So in addition to a public-facing site, I understand what Commander Crow is saying. Unfortunately, we do see mental health disorders and substance use disorders in the jail. So the question is, what do we do about it? So I think we also need to ask our colleagues from the judicial side, prosecutor, public defender, and our judges, what process they want to use and how they can support this. In other words, will they cooperate and help and ensure that people get diverted from jail and go into treatment if that's the decision? I just think that there's the process side of it that we have to address, and we're not talking about it. I think Courage to Change is a great example of an integrated housing solution. We can't pay for the rent for everyone who needs it as much as we would, again, want to do it. So the question is, how can we find ways to support and fund some programs initially in terms of housing and transitional housing? It would be great to have, instead of segregated transitional housing, to have integrated transitional housing throughout the community and to have a structured support system. How do we pay for it? It would be great. It is such a great model. Courage to Change is a great model. Do we have to create some sort of transitional housing elsewhere that is more concentrated and segregated from the community just because that's what we can afford to do? I don't know that answer, but we cannot just say, you're done with your treatment, see you, good luck. We have to make sure that those other systems and programs are in there, from life skills and GED training and parenting classes and violence reduction classes and anger management class, everything. We need everything. But the question is, we cannot do it ourselves. Who do we work with? How do we do it? And how do we avoid becoming the sole funding source for a lot of very expensive programming? There are other problems that are going to come up, like shortfalls in personnel to actually provide the treatment and support and programming. That's a national problem, and we're going to have to figure that one out too. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you. And yes.
I think Commissioner Thomas really pointed out the crux of the problem there, which is funding. I think that while I speak only for myself and not for the Board of Judges, and I don't have a criminal docket, I have a family docket. If there were good places to send people, we would love that. We don't have the money to fund it. You don't have the money to fund it. We are none of us experts. Well, maybe Kate Wiltz is, or other people are, but I'm not. in these services, I think at this point, we need to consider when we build something, we need to have some flexibility in what programming we offer, because those programs and their availability will change. I think we need to have a process for reviewing programs and evaluating them. And I think that's, of course, up to the commissioners and council in terms of how to do that. But I'm thinking here of something like an RFP, where we say to the community, what would you be able to offer and what would the costs be? And then maybe that's something for the commissioners and the council to decide what services they want to have at that time. And then we see how well that works and we can make changes to it as we go. I don't think we can wait to build something until we have all of the services planned out, because then the people who are currently there are still going to be suffering. That's my concern. It's just, we have always been having, as this committee, a chicken and egg problem, right? I mean, I think we would all agree, we don't know what to build, but we've got to build something, and then we don't know what can fit there. And I think that something that Commissioner Thomas and I agreed upon 2 or 3 meetings ago was, we all would like to have the smallest number of feasible beds. We would all like to have more services. I haven't heard anybody disagree with that. It's a question of how do we get those services, who's going to pick what services, and how are they going to be instituted? And I'm going to then fall back to something that Ms. Wilson has always said, which is we've got to ensure constitutional standards of care for the people who are there now, for the staff who are there now. We've got to have something. So I would encourage us to maybe think with a little bit more flexibility about these services. Maybe we can identify 2 or 3 to start with, or put out an RFP and ask people to give us proposals to start maybe in 2024 or something like that to start. But I don't think we can wait to design all the services and then build. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Actually, Judge Crothy hasn't had a chance to weigh in at all yet. Let's let her, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, I just had brief, something I wanted to add. I learned a lot from reading the reports that the county paid for. I think there's a lot of really good information in there. On page 46 of the best practices, and the key findings, it said that best practices call for scattered site services, particularly for permanent supportive housing, which I think Peter mentioned, and maybe Jennifer too, and supported employment, and for mobile services, for crisis services, and services for the unhoused. So I found that pretty interesting, because I felt like if it's scattered site, instead of building this large facility that it's hard for people to get to, scattered sites seems like something you could do maybe even cheaper than having like a large facility, and you could have them all over town where people could easily access them. So that's the only thing I wanted to add. And I agree with everything else everybody said. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very interested in what Eve Hill had to say about scattered sites, because it wasn't really about NIMBYism. It was actually that people do so much better when they're actually integrated into their community. And when you put all of them in one place, they tend to form a group and not integrate. And an idea that I've been kicking around without figuring out how to pay for it is there a lot of container homes are being built now. These are like the big shipping containers that can easily be converted into homes, not very big, but it is a place to live. And I think, and it might be easier to find isolated or available places scattered throughout the community that way. April, what was it that you wanted to say?
Oh, I just wanted to share that I think as we're working through treatment and trying to figure out what to prioritize, because it's a big topic, right? We need to keep in mind that there's some people who are in the jail where the decision might be because they're flight risk or it's too dangerous to release them at that time. They might need different services in the jail than at other individuals at different stages in that process, which I think going back to, that's what Commander Crow's getting at, is that there's programs when we're selecting what programs to be in the jail, it should be the ones that are narrowly tailored to that need. Because if we can have community programs that are outside of the jail for individuals who don't fall into those two categories. I think it'll promote support for people not being in the jail when it's appropriate. And one last thing, as we're trying to figure out where to start, I noticed for the Mental Health Summit, there was a documentary they referenced. It was on PBS. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was The Definition of Insanity. Is that right? So I watched the documentary, and one of the things that they took as an approach was a mapping approach, which I think kind of overlaps with the Intercept model. And maybe instead of starting with mental health, which is a very large topic, we find a particular place. Especially if our goal is to divert people from the jail, then we need to talk about things like recidivism. And some of it is funding. I understand that. But I can tell you, and just anecdotally, recently we were dealing a mental health issue, and we realized that there were two different release forms that the facility needed, which was new information. And that ability to connect information sooner would have allowed us to take different action. So I also think it's not just funding, it's being able to build those bridgeways. So I know who to contact when I'm in the court to follow up on their mental health appointment where they're going to get their medication. And if we could pick and map a particular place, I think we could start slowly working on some of the challenges we have and share some of those so we can address them and hopefully slowly try to address things like recidivism and challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of good ideas. Peter, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I wanted to say I attended a breakout session on mapping at the Mental Health Summit. And what we learned there was that Centerstone over in Bartholomew County has done quite an extensive mapping project, and they use the Purdue Extension Services to do that. And I learned that too. I was shocked. And so I don't think that that's a bad idea. And one of the things that came out of that breakout session was that mapping is so important in that it shows you those linkages that you didn't know existed, because we all sit around here thinking that we know our own departments, and in reality, we probably don't know just how many different areas we touch. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, and I think one problem that kind of lies behind all of this, especially when we're talking about Intercept Zero or before any contact with criminal justice, is communication. It's how do we reach the people who need these services and get the services to them before they end up interacting with criminal justice. And yes, Catherine.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One of the things that I want to just occasionally bring back to the forefront is that, of course, we're no longer the Criminal Justice, but the Community Justice Committee, and part of civil justice includes legal advice to people who are self-represented. And I just want to throw out an example here of how I think that can relate to Intercept Zero and why I think it's so important to not forget about civil and community justice. One of the things recommended by the Civil Litigation Task Force, which was appointed by Chief Justice Rush here in Indiana and which released its recommendations in the last year, was having a self-help legal center. This is something that has been recommended by many, many groups around the country. It is something where there would be an attorney paid for by the county in offices in the Justice Building or wherever we end up being as courts, where you can go in and they will tell you things like, no, you don't want to fill out that form. You want to fill out this form. And what does that mean? Oh, you want to get guardianship of your nephew? Are you sure you don't want to adopt your nephew? Are you sure you don't want to have custody of your nephew? And here's what the differences are and what that means. And we don't have any service like that right now. We have a great legal services office here in Bloomington. It serves 18 counties or so, maybe 14. They are strapped. We have a pro bono district that tries to help. They are strapped. We've been able to bring in legal advice and mediation to all of our housing cases. We need to have that in every case. It's just essential. If somebody doesn't lose their housing, they're going to be a lot more stable and a lot less susceptible to getting caught up in the criminal justice system. And I cannot urge enough that that is a smallish investment. It is basically one person and some printers and maybe a scanner, and it would help people coordinate their exhibits for a civil case. It would help people coordinate, how do I get a witness called into court if I need a witness? How do I present evidence of all of the damage that my landlord let happen to my unit so that I can defend against this damages claim? All of those things are huge. And To me, that very much interrelates. Thank you.
That does. Thank you. Yeah, that is at least one way to achieve communication with people who are in danger of becoming involved in the criminal justice system, but haven't yet. But probably we need even more than just that. But yeah,
I wasn't suggesting that
No.
as the sole solution.
but that is a good idea. I know that in both the reports, I think it was in both the reports we had done, they did mention having that kind of a situation like that available. I don't think they talked about having it staffed with a lawyer, but that would certainly make it a whole lot more effective.
Well, and let me compare, right now, the clerk's office is getting these requests every 5 minutes. I mean, slight exaggeration there, but not by much. And those people are not attorneys and they cannot provide legal advice. To do so is a crime. And of course, they risk giving the wrong legal advice, which is even worse than not giving any legal advice. And I think we need somebody, as permitted under the ethical rules of the state of Indiana, to do limited scope advice only representation. We're not talking about somebody who would go to court with you. We're talking about someone who will advise you for 10 to 15 minutes at a counter to point you in the right direction. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a very interesting idea. Julie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say it is a great idea. Somehow it ended up on our ARPA list, but since this is a year-to-year funding requirement, I think somebody needs to make a proposal to the county council and present it. And I think it's a fabulous idea and I hope it happens. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. And I'm looking at you, Catherine. And now I'm looking at Kate, Jen, and Peter. Yes, I think that's a very good idea.
I'm sorry, I want to throw in one other thing there, which is I think that service should also be available to people in the jail.
Yes,
That's something Commander Crow has brought up to me, is that he needs some civil legal assistance for people in the jail, and Indiana Legal Services is not able, under their funding ability, to provide that service. And I think it's critical that people in the jail get that service.
yeah, very good. Does anyone have anything more to say on this topic right at this time? I think it's something we're going to be revisiting very frequently. And I don't see anyone on Zoom.
What might be our next steps then on this topic?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was kind of thinking about that and not saying anything. I think it is a good idea to invite some of these people that are listed here to come and talk to us so we can get a notion of what their needs are. In some cases, it may be that they actually have capital needs that could help them out a whole lot, and such as vehicles or something like that, or an office even. And those are things that we could consider for the ARPA funding. And there are some other sources of funding there. Later on this week, I'll be, or actually probably the council, because it's most relevant to them, and I are meeting with Jay Chowdhury with the state. Remind me what he is with the state, Peter. Do you happen to remember?
He's with FSSA.
With what? Oh, yeah, right. FSSA. And he has a lot of information about funding that the state is hoping to make available to us. So I'm hoping that something good will come out of that. Okay, anything else? Then, well, we obviously have not got anywhere with the jail design. I think, as I said before, we're now trying to get on the city council's agenda for the rezone for the land that we're purchasing. And we are hoping to get that done by the end of the year. At the same time, we're trying to make arrangements we have a purchase agreement that we would buy it by the end of the year. And we're trying to get that extended just in case things don't move that quickly. And Julie, do you have anything to add to that?
Not today. It is not on the December 7th city council agenda. So they have a meeting on the 14th and the 21st, however. So I'm getting more information from the city council on that.
Great. Okay. When you get more information about that, could you let us know? Because some of us might want to attend that. Hopefully encourage them
Absolutely.
to move in the
absolutely.
right direction. Thank you. And as for an update on the Center for Collaborative Systems Change proposal, that proposal is on the commissioner's agenda for Wednesday. And some small changes have been made in it, and the scope of work has been outlined a little bit more thoroughly, which I just saw earlier this afternoon, and I will try to get those sent to everyone on the committee so you can see what it is. And then once, if the commissioners pass it, then that will certainly be dependent on the council appropriating the money for it. So, yeah, Peter.
And I just wanted to mention that that scope of work is on this committee's website, and it's also in the back of the room. However, as Commissioner Jones just indicated, it has changed ahead of Wednesday's agenda. So you can find that scope of work on the commissioner's
Our packet on the
Gosh,
website.
words.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we can get that updated on the website too.
Yep, I will look into that. And now the surveys that hopefully everyone is doing. Catherine, I heard that you have been working on one.
Yeah, I developed a Google sheet, a Google form for all court staff, including judges, court reporters, bailiffs, and probation, everyone in the judicial branch of our local government. Asked the judges for their input on questions, got some good suggestions, tried to incorporate as many of them as I could. Last time I checked, we had 29 responses. The
Excellent.
response rate is good so far. They had asked for a little bit more time for probation to be able to complete the survey, and I had understood that that would be okay. So I told them that that was fine. So I am hopeful that by the end of this month, they will be done. They wanted a chance to do some more research as part of their replies. I can't say no to that. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
where we are. But I'm heartened by the number of responses. And when I took a very brief look through them, some of them were extremely detailed, and I was really glad to see that. And I was really glad I had a couple of different court reporters come up and talk to me about, you know, is it okay to give a response? I'm like, yes, please give me a full response. A couple of bailiffs have provided a lot of information, and I think it's really important to get all of those voices in. So I'm really excited to get those finalized and to be sharing them with the committee.
Very good. Thank you very much. Are you also including the court administrator?
Yes, all the court
Okay.
staff. Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
wonderful. That sounds truly promising. Thank you very much. And yeah, I think by the end of the month, we'll give us enough time, especially since we may be set back a bit on the purchase. How about in the prosecutor's office?
So the prosecutor's office and the public defender's office worked jointly. Ms. Runbeck can give us a little additional update if I miss anything. We worked jointly for an anonymous survey that was sent out to both of our offices, as well as the Monroe County Bar Association, which Ms. Runbeck is president of. And it got, I think it's a great survey. I'm pretty excited about it. We've got a lot of great responses. I think it's 49 as of about right now. It closes December 10th. So actually, I think we would be ready to present our findings. If we have our next meeting on December 12th, we'll be ready to present our findings then. So I was wondering if we could get on the agenda if we end up doing it on December 12th.
Yeah, I think that would certainly be possible. And Peter, will you make a note of that so I don't forget?
Consider it done.
Thank you. And yeah, that's great to hear. And Catherine, well, I don't want you to rush things too much, so we can wait until.
I will talk to Chief Probation Officer Brady and Presiding Judge Dekoff and see where we are.
Okay, sounds great. Lori, how about in health?
We're still working on collecting some of the questions and the survey data that we're looking for. So we're still working on getting all of that information at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I know Angie is actually taking care of most of what you would need. And I don't believe we surveyed the council because it's not exactly needed right now. So that's very good to hear. I'm really pleased to hear about that. And then does anyone have anything else at this point? Peter?
I just wanted to go back on the agenda just real quick. And my understanding for the jail design is that there has been an RFQ issued. And I
Yes.
think that from what I understand, and again, I just want to make sure that my understanding is correct, that there are 3 companies that have responded to that RFQ. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. The RFQ is in my Dropbox, and technical services department did something to my computer and all of my Dropboxes went away. So I have not had a chance to actually look at that very closely, but
And do you recall the deadline for that RFQ off the top of your head at this moment?
it's passed. It was, oh, Julie, do you remember when that was?
I do not.
It was passed a couple weeks ago. So we have got their qualifications. And at this point, we'll be looking at them and then trying to arrange for the 3 of them to come and give us a kind of presentation that would be possibly a separate one just for the committee and then another one that would be for the public. We haven't figured out all the details yet, but we do want to be able to consider all 3 of them equally. Anything else? If there's nothing else, then is there any public comment?
So sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I
I'm
was-
sorry, Jen.
No, it's okay. I know the committee collaboration was on the.
Oh, I'm
agenda as
sorry.
well.
I
It's okay.
skipped right over
It's
that.
totally fine. We can come back to it.
Right now, let's come back to it.
So I guess I thought it would be a really good idea for us as a committee to truly have a collaborative conversation of, like our next steps, because things seem to be, and I'll say for this discussion today, it seems like it's very thorough, like very flowy conversation. And then we are trying to put in our next steps. But I also feel like each of us at this table have some type of expertise in some way, shape, or fashion, with whether you're judges, courts, jail commander, et cetera, financier, commissioners, all of us have a play in this, and thus why we are at this makeshift table of, this particular committee. And so I just really think that it is important as the Community Justice Response Committee to truly make sure that everybody feels like they are having a play at the table, as well as also being heard too, because we all can hear, but we also need to listen and collaborate as well. There's a big difference with that. So I just wanted to see if, we can have like a short discussion of how do we think in terms of our next steps, how can this committee collaborate together? Obviously, we're doing some pieces with surveys and things like that, but how do we put everything all together for us? And I just thought that it would be important for us to have that discussion. So I don't really have much, but if other people had things. Did I write this?
Oh, please, Catherine.
I would just like to really thank you for making that point. I think it's really critical. One of the things that I think we were kind of informally talking about at the close of the last meeting was about how everybody here has sets of knowledge, and it is difficult for a lot of us to just say things if we don't think everyone in the room is going to agree with them, that it's important nonetheless. And I appreciate very much that this is a room full of people who can put that ego aside and listen and consider that we all have different areas of expertise and we all need to put those on the table. For me, for my part, I think we need to be thinking very carefully about co-location. And I think we need to be thinking very carefully about how we're going to pick what services are there. And I would propose that we take the RFP model, but that's not up to me. That's above my pay grade. That's for the commissioners and council to decide. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how to do that. And where we go, or just, know that that's my vote, I guess. But I think we need to start really identifying the list of what we want to be in a new facility so that we can give as much focus to the proposal making people as possible. I mean, if the design firms are going to come in with somebody over here at 450 beds and somebody over here at 200 beds, then we can't do an apples to apples comparison. And that's going to make it really tough for you all to make that choice. I fully recognize it's not this committee making that choice. It's the council and commissioners making that choice. I get it. But especially if we are going to be, for example, including the courts and going down to the Fullerton Pike location, we're going to need even more attorney-client conference room space, for example, because they won't be able to meet with their clients at their offices and then just come over to court. We are going to need to really think about the increased amount of space that we're going to need to have a food court for staff down there and stuff like that, because we won't be near downtown restaurants. So I just want to really be thinking carefully about what that list of facility rooms will be. I'm a frustrated architect, so I like to take little mini CAD programs and draw it out. I have a little drawing in Visio of what I think the new courtrooms should look like, just, because I have problems. So I just want us to really get specific so that we can get good comparisons and get people out of the current facility. Every time April says it, I just want to cheer. It's true. We are not meeting our duty to provide decent care for people in our jail right now. It's unacceptable. For our staff, for the inmates, it's not acceptable.
Thank you. Yeah. April, do you have?
Yes, I do appreciate the conversation. I think it's particularly critical now. I know we're having incredibly difficult conversations, and we all have our areas of expertise, and we all have our different areas of responsibility too. But one of the really wonderful things I think about this committee in particular is that as we're all together and focusing on a task, and finding ways that we can talk about it and take different approaches. Sometimes when I'm asking questions, just to think about it a different way to see if it's maybe a way to solve a problem. And maybe it's not, but I think we don't figure that out unless we ask questions. But I think what's great about this committee is if we want true reform of the system, we're going to have to be able to work together to achieve that. If not, we're just going to build another facility and we're just going to keep acting and making the same decisions without real change. And I think that only happens by working together and listening to one another. And I think we're particularly excited about this. I'm particularly excited about the survey because I think it's given us an opportunity to share a little bit with you about some of the challenges that we're having, which hopefully bringing your expertise, you can tell us a little bit about if there's another way to approach some of the treatment challenges that we have, or maybe some communication bridges that you have that we do not have that we're struggling with. So moving forward in terms of steps, I think what I've heard from the committee as a whole, that there's a hope that we focus both on treatment and not on one or the other. So one proposal is either we have one meeting where we talk about the jail primarily, and the another one where we talk about treatment, or you split the session in half, maybe 40 minutes on one topic, 40 minutes on another, and 10 minutes for comment at the end. Just an idea. I also think it might be helpful if we get some of the documents in advance, just so we can have, and I know that's really difficult because we're all dealing with other responsibilities, but it might help us have more effective and shorter conversations because we have so many things to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And when you said documents in advance, do you mean the agenda? Do you mean like anything that we're talking about, like scope of work for Center for Collaborative Justice, or what were you referencing there?
Some of the documents we're receiving in the meetings have been, I think having the agenda in advance is helpful. We have received contracts during the meetings. We have received power slideshows during the meetings. I think most of the things we've received have been during the meeting. And I want to make sure I'm giving an educated answer and I know we all have our different responsibilities, but I want to make recommendations that are solid. And to do that, I think I'd like to be more prepared. And I think that would just help us all feel like we're coming in with the same information. And I think sometimes it doesn't feel like we all have the same information, which is normal. That happens everywhere. So I'm going to try to be good about that for our survey next week and make sure we send you some of that data on Sunday. So that way, if you want to take a look at it when we come to our presentation on Monday, that you feel like you can ask questions. So I'm going to try to make an effort myself.
That was a really helpful clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, definitely. Darcy, do you have anything you'd like to add? Does anyone else? Because Kate, Lori, let's continue going around the table. Lori?
Sorry, just very briefly. I think for the health department, as some of the survey data is being collected, I think that it could be really beneficial for us to be able to, sort of like April was mentioning, being able to have some of that information, sharing that with us ahead of time. For me, I think as the health department, I'm kind of looking at, okay, what data should we be collecting, kind of like trying to piece into where we might be fitting, and having someone else kind of share with us what they're exploring would be able to give us a better opportunity to go, okay, this might fit in. Maybe we should look into these aspects. I think that would help us with the data that we are collecting.
Okay, thank you. Karen, do you have anything to add? No, Kate?
I'm echoing the thanks for having this conversation because it's got a lot of potential, I think, for our next meetings to be really effective. And building off of what I've heard, I think that devoting time, maybe even more than just facility focused and treatment focused, but we need to have I've heard that the intercept model is something that everyone sort of feels comfortable with framing our discussions perhaps. So I would suggest that we look at intercept 0, concentrate on that. What is it? What are the needs? Do we know what the needs are? What information do we still need to gather? And what is it that we can put in place? What do we need others to put in place? I mean, just have a structure around the intercept question and then move to intercept 1, et cetera, to the extent that, I mean, there's some intercepts that I would be happy to listen to, but have no idea about.
Yeah.
And there's some that I feel like I could contribute. The other thing I wanted to suggest too is, because having information ahead of time is very helpful. It is also not always possible. I am a procrastinator, so I have sympathy for those who don't quite get things to the table ahead of time. But anytime something is posted, maybe could we CC the committee? Or if you generate something for the committee, CC everyone, and that will help, I think, if we just have that practice. And it does sound like with the various data collection that's going on in the represented departments and offices, that we might need a little administrative support, and looking across the room, to maybe compile that into digestible, themed maybe content for us to review. So I would encourage us to kind of coordinate that so that we can be more efficient in making progress.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Jen?
Nope, this has been a good discussion. Actually, I'm just kidding. One, not kidding about the good discussion. Kidding at one more thing. Is that, let me just read it. Sorry. Long day and no coffee. So one of you mentioned CC and everybody, and I know I brought this up a couple of different times and I still don't have an answer for it, but the Criminal Justice Reform Committee email, it still seems to be like dead. So I know that's something that would be also very helpful because, like I said before, I tested it and haven't received anything. So just making sure, just so that people know that they're sending an email and it's not just going out into the ether
Yes.
of Al Gore's internet, but just making sure that we all know where it's going. So
Yes.
I'm on it
That
today.
would be very helpful. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Courtney, if you could possibly look into that, check with TSD. Really, the email, anyone who sends an email, it should come to all of us. Probably it would be good if it came to you as well.
That's not how it was designed.
Yes, yeah, Julie, I'm sorry.
That's not how it was designed. It's supposed to go to a box and then a digest can go out of compilation of, instead of getting 300 emails, you're going to get one that may have 20 in it and another that may have 40 in it or whatever. They're going to be put into digest form. That was my understanding. So I think we just need clarity on that. And I want to add something as well. I feel like we all have great intentions. We all have great plans. We all have great ideas. We're creative people. I feel what we're lost on right now is steps. And we've gotten some really detailed information on planning and bringing to fruition a facility. And I'd like us to talk about that in January, because I think we should have a plan instead of going over a lot of the same things and not really knowing what's next. I think we should know what's next. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I think maybe you were not at the meeting where we had discussed this email, because certainly everyone had requested that it go to everyone.
I'm just basing it off of what I heard from Ms. Purdy, because she made the
Okay.
arrangements. We did not make the arrangements, Ms. Purdy did. So I think somebody needs to, I would recommend, Commissioner Jones, that you talk to Angie and then talk to TSD.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really want all these emails. I would rather have documents posted on our webpage, because there is a webpage for this group. I do not want to receive emails with documents all week long. I just want to know that before the meeting, I go to our website and I look at what's posted there. That would be much more efficient for me. I'm already losing emails because I have so many.
How about the rest of you? How do you feel about that?
I'd like all the emails. So if someone has a comment, I want to read it. So if the information is helpful to me to learn more from other people's perspectives. So I am open to receiving any and all information you want to send to me to read, so I can be prepared for these meetings.
Just to clarify, what I'm saying is, rather than receiving each email individually from each person as it comes in, I thought that the way that it had been set up was that, like, once a week you get a digest of all the emails in one email that you can look at. And the part I'm talking about is everybody's talking about wanting documents. I don't want documents sent in my email. I want them posted on the website, and that way the public can see it too. Two different things.
Yes.
So just to clarify though, even the digest isn't working because nobody,
No,
to my knowledge, has received a digest.
I
And
don't.
know that at least one person.
I don't
Okay.
even know who, since we are not receiving those, I don't know if maybe Ms. Purdy is or how that got set up. I'll certainly check into it. It occurs to me that maybe what would work well is to go ahead and send the emails to everyone, and people who don't want to have to go through them one by one can ignore them. And I would say once every 2 weeks, we could maybe get a digest of them.
I would assume TSD can set it up as a digest, but that also we could do that in our individual inboxes, so that if Ms. Thomas, for example, wants to get it in one place to look at it at once, she could just set up a rule in Outlook to have all of them from that email go to that folder, and then they'd be there for her to look at. And that way we can customize it for whomever wants to get what they want.
I agree with that, but in Commissioner Thomas's defense, I think she was referring to the fact that I was like, send me everything you've ever created and plan to create or post anywhere directly. And I get when some people might get overwhelmed by that. No
Yeah.
problem.
Well, and I think we can try this out. And if it doesn't seem to be working out very well, then we can make changes. And I will talk to Angie and try to get this straightened out. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Anyone?
I have a random thought, and I will apologize in advance for not checking this random thought with our lovely health department representative, but we have a health department and maybe they might want to consider coming up with a system for like a selection process for training or for programming in the jail. I'm just throwing that out there. Now I will stop talking. Sorry.
That's very interesting.
I do think that that's something that we would be interested in. I think what I'm looking for at this time is getting more information, as I think that that's going to be really crucial for us to be able to then kind of work out any specifics on programming and what that might look like.
Yeah, I think at this time, we're kind of in an information collecting stage. And that's some of why things seem kind of disjointed and all, because once we have information to work on, we can make a plan and move forward with it. I would like to ask that everyone kind of think about ways that we can collaborate better and what that would actually mean. And maybe we could discuss this again. I know it just kind of got sprung on you all and you didn't quite understand what it meant. So probably no one's really had a chance to think about it that much. But at our next meeting, we'll put it back on the agenda and be able to address it more carefully, hopefully.
I just have
Catherine.
one final suggestion, and I don't know how it would work with the open door law, and I certainly want to promote public access to everything, but could we use something like OneDrive for the committee where we could all literally share documents on it and then they're all in one place and people can review it as often as they want? Something like that might be really helpful for this committee.
Yes, I think the way we typically do that is by using Dropboxes. And we could certainly ask TSD to set up a Dropbox for this committee, which probably would be the easiest and most helpful way to do it. And I should say that it would be mostly a place for documents and things like that, and they would be considered public records. So if anyone wanted access to it, they could get it. April.
I was wondering what your thoughts might be about, I know I've invited everyone to come spend a day in court and in other courtrooms, but I know everyone's dealing with a lot of responsibilities during the day. If we even did a tour of the Justice Building in an evening for an hour for this committee, where we can kind of walk through some of the courtrooms and so you can see some of the places that we're making decisions. Because I think when we're talking about treatment, we could even do a presentation walking through from when someone is charged to when they are, a case is disposed, say, for probation. And we could do a brief presentation and a tour that might be able to give some context when we're trying to map where to start with treatment services. Just a suggestion. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I like that suggestion. And it occurred to me, I think some of why none of us have actually taken up your invitation to come and watch is because we don't really know where, when, what will happen, anything like that. Possibly if when you have cases coming up that you think would be very kind of generic and demonstrate well what the whole process is, if you could maybe let us know when those are coming up and hopefully what time. I know cases get moved around a whole lot. So, but that could make it easier for us to make a decision as to when and where we would like to go. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? I think it is now time for public comment. If no one has, oh, yes. if you would please come up to the microphone and state your name.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth.
I'm not here to swear you in.
I'm David Garshaw here on behalf of the NAACP and the concerns that we share, and I could say that everyone here does. I've enjoyed, I've benefited from the 3 sessions here that I've experienced, and it sounds very positive. I would say that what I heard at the very last part of the group conversation is around collaboration. And I think that's extremely significant. And it's actually part of the point I want to make, plus offer an opinion. And that has to do with what would be the funding process. And I may have missed it because I wasn't here, or I may have missed it in the 3 sessions that I've heard, but I have not heard the need and how difficult it will be to have the kind of collaboration that we here in the United States of America should have on issues such as this. And that's funding and responsibilities that we find on the federal, state, county, and urban level. And I've heard references that hopefully the state will do this or do that, but I didn't hear that it's in collaboration with what we're doing and that we're applying any kind of political effort or anything like that, which is so significant. You should see my notes I'm trying to make here. So the point I would like and hope that we have is that there would be a well-designed, monitored, and organized, negotiated, cooperated effort. Whether one person's in charge of it or a group is in charge of it, and their only responsibility is how in the heck are we going to get all the interested parties involved in paying and supporting what they should. And every level of government that I'm aware of shares this responsibility. Okay, I think you might be ready for my opinion. The opinion that I want to share, it comes from my knowledge and experience of how we have dealt with homelessness over recent years. And with what I know, plus the experience that I've had, it's kind of pathetic. And yesterday morning on my way to church, going through the alley behind First Christian and the History Center, there's this dude sitting on the ground with his back up against the wall in this position, covered by a blanket. And it doesn't take much observation around the community to see that all over the place. And so I'm involved in that. But I'm just saying that is not a good model for what we should do to help people. But what I see here, again, bravo, keep at it. And collaboration is the key, not only among our services here, but with the city, with the state. And I was going to use an adjective, but I won't. The people in Washington.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good point. And some of that is just in the works, and we have yet to actually get there. Is there any other public comment? And I did forget to mention that it's limited to 3 minutes. They typically put it up. They do.
Right there, so we know.
Honor system.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll
timing.
we'll kind of
Hi.
keep track.
I'm back again, Debbie Fish. I'm representing the Hope for Prisoners Task Force at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Bloomington, and also CARE, Not Cages. I come from an educational background as a teacher and administrator, so you'll hear pieces of that. Because I know CARE, Not Cages, and many others really want to make sure the fewest possible members of the community are even in the criminal
justice system. We're just wondering if the committee has taken the recommendation of the Ken Ray report to estimate the cost of renovating the existing facility. And where is that? We haven't seen it. 2, when you talk about the zero intercept, there's a couple of promising things. One is a local minister that I'm starting to communicate with, not from my church. And he really is looking at building a dream center here. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. There's 84 around the world, 29 states, 11 countries. They work with the homeless, hunger, poverty. It's residential, it's outreach. You can have an 18-month stay, and there is someone in Bloomington who is ready to work on that. And if he's willing, when you invite people to come in and speak, I want to see if he will do that. I'm just starting that communication. Also, you were talking about giving resources to people where they can get them. In the early 70s, I think, a man named Bill Milliken started CIS, Communities in Schools, and there was one in Brazil, Indiana. Right now, I don't think there's any in Indiana, but they bring resources into the schools. So someone from the court system, someone from drivers, Bureau of Motor Vehicles, doctors, dentists, anything in the community that those people need, they find space in the schools, because a school is in every part of this community. And that way the people there can walk to find out. And what you wanted, I thought, oh my gosh, they need legal advice there too. There is no reason why this school district could not apply for that grant. And I tried to get the former superintendent to do that, and she did a little piece of one grant for that, but nothing like what I've heard him talk about. He came to a conference I helped put on in Indianapolis, and his work is amazing. So you can't do it alone, as I know you know. Another quick thing, how much time do I have?
Well, maybe a minute.
Okay. You talked about going to people, wanting to give money to people locally who had proven records of effectiveness. Courage to Change does, and yet they have a 40 people waiting on a bed. So there are places here who could just use another facility and be able to serve a whole lot more. Another one, let's see. I thought some of us, when you came to the Care Not Cages meeting, we signed something so we could be surveyed too. I have never received a survey. I would still like, I think there are other community members who would like that. And lastly, I want a clarification. Is the CJRC, does the R stand for reform or response? And I just want to say, I found out in education many years ago, maybe in the late 90s, reform doesn't always mean better. So I would like that clarification. Thank you.
It is reform. It started out as response. So some of us still stumble around a bit.
Every time it says response.
Yeah, it does.
Consider
Okay.
that changed.
Yes. It looks like that's the part of the agenda that we didn't actually read. And I would like to mention that locally, there is a group called Heading Home that's headed up by United Way. And they're doing a whole lot of work on homelessness, how affordable housing, things, all of that. And actually, they're doing it more regionally than only in Monroe County, because the region certainly supplies Monroe County with problems. Heading Home. And they've been working for, well, they really got started pretty much at the beginning of COVID and have done a whole lot. So we're keeping close track of what they're doing. We aren't actually trying to take on any of these problems yet because they're working with it so specifically. But we do hope that they will come up with solutions and that we'll be able to work with them to help them out. And actually, the county has funded them with $2.4 million. So, yes.
Hi, I'm TM with the Care Not Cages group. I guess I'd like to say today was encouraging the direction that this group seems to take towards diversion. I would like to emphasize that prison or jail and prison and incarceration in general is incredibly traumatizing. And we know we've brought it up in this group before, 80% of inmates in our state suffer from mental health issues and substance abuse, and that incarcerating them will exacerbate those issues. And while exacerbating those issues, putting people into or incarcerating individuals limits their access to treatment. Medicaid will not allow you to spend money on folks without freedom of movement. And that transfers that cost from the federal government to our local community and to members suffering from mental health issues and substance abuse. I guess I want to also mention last meeting we had, the director of Courage to Change Sober Living came and she mentioned they receive a grant of $8,000 per individual that gets them through the year, and that the county spends that much in 80 days on folks in the prison. There is an opportunity cost to incarcerating folks, and I believe that this committee should take every option to limit the number of inmates as much as possible.
Thank you. Yes. Any further? Yeah. Would you like to come up to the microphone?
Thank you. So I actually brought some pages of information to pass around. If you'd like to, you can look at them now or later. But hi, thanks for having us. Thanks for providing this opportunity for comment. My name is Edie Barbeau. I'm also with Care Not Cages and also do food advocacy work in Bloomington. And I came here to kind of point out the fact that up to this point, a lot of this discussion has focused around the new jail. And so it is encouraging to hear this kind of shift in conversation towards more community and civil justice responses. I guess one of the suggestions that keeps coming up and was brought up today was the idea of co-locating social and mental health services with the new jail facility. And I want to reiterate that the creation of a jail campus is not a silver bullet solution to the problems with the current jail. In reality, I think that this approach is far more likely to divert energy and fiscal resources away from the very real and tangible and evidence-based solutions stewarded by programs and facilities already in Bloomington. I want to ask, what about having these facilities out of town and connected to the jail would be better than investing in the resources and programs we already trust, that are already that already understand this community and that are physically accessible to those most at risk of incarceration. Many people do not have the means to get out to, you know, a campus outside of town. So I also want to reiterate what Jennifer Crosley mentioned earlier about working with local communities. there is an abundance of knowledge in this community. And a few weeks ago, Care Not Cages hosted an open meeting to hear from residents about the new jail proposal. A few of you were there. And other attendees included several social workers and people who have loved ones who are currently in jail or were in jail. Together, we came up with a list of nearly 70 ways that we could address the problems that contribute to incarceration rates. That's on these pages. These are the direct responses. So in case those haven't been shared from your fellow committee members, I wanted to share those today. Some of those included like addiction harm reduction, funding to courage to change, improved, reliable, affordable access to work, or transit access to work, and others that were discussed today. So again, I think that there's a lot of other solutions available, and it is possible to leverage taxpayer dollars to support people in this community and provide them with the resources and care. So thank you.
Thank you. I would like to mention that, and this is something that in the Eve Hill report, she talks about quite a bit. Basically, with the new jail, it should be much more efficient, which should allow us to transfer resources to other things that will help in different ways. And that's one of the things we're looking for.
Hello, my name is Max Smith, and I'm here for several reasons. I'm here to support Care Not Cages. A little bit about me: I'm formerly incarcerated. I think I had the record at the jail for a while for most consecutive days. I'm also a contractor. I was on the board of New Leaf for a few years. So I'd also like the conversation about getting to people before they become incarcerated. And I personally believe that a lack of sense of community is why people, for a number of reasons, become incarcerated. Mental health issues. I'd like us to think more about, instead of building a new facility, think about how we can use what we have. New Leaf, New Life is one of the few not-for-profits that has managed to not get entangled in the criminal justice system. And for that reason, people, who struggle, trust them. And, that's not the case with Centerstone and some of the other, even Amethyst House and some of the other places that provide care for people, but are also woven into the government system. And so all those things together, to me, it makes more sense to figure out how to let the people who have been doing this work for years and who know, cops do what they, are supposed to do. They're not social workers, and the jail does what it's supposed to do, hold people until their fate is determined. Social work is not something that either of those either of those things should do. So, and to me, I've been in that jail. I know every inch of it. I know Colonel Crow pretty good. That I think $20 million would make that place a much better place and serve more people. There's a lot of wasted space in there. We talk about $70 million for a facility to basically better house more people, that we could spend a lot less money and let the community do what the community needs to do, which is, figure out how to make people feel like they own part of their community instead of being marginalized. And that's all I have. But I hope this committee will think more about those type of things. And I hope this isn't on a rail to a $70,000 place to just put more people. That's not going to solve any of our problems.
Thank you. Thank you. And something Ken raised, and I meant to say this earlier, Ken raised suggestion of how many beds we need is not actually something that we're looking at. We hope to go with considerably less than that. So he's just talking in conventional terms. Did you have something? And then I believe we have one person on Zoom, and I think we'll have to cut it off after that.
Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm also with Care Not Cages, which is a group made up of local residents who understand how damaging jail is and how important it is to make sure that the fewest possible members of our community have to spend time there. And I mean, I think an obvious question that many others have asked, and that I believe I've asked before, is why there isn't an itemized list of specifically all of the problems in the jail and what that would cost to fix them. You know, the Ken Ray report does list 53 problems, and a lot of them are very broad and sort of just imply a need for expansion, like lack of prepared rooms and et cetera. And then some of them are actually very specific and seem as if very easy fixes, like graffiti on the walls and broken lights. And so I don't understand why there hasn't been that estimate and that we're already jumping towards building a new jail. And I just want to be really clear, you know, I really appreciated like the 40-minute focus on treatment today from you all. I will say that like from some of you all, it just felt very performative. And I just think coupling mental health and treatment with incarceration is just, it doesn't make sense. Jails around the country have just taken on this mental health and gender positive rebrand to justify incarceration expansion, especially since the George Floyd uprising. And, you know, it doesn't matter if the cages are painted a calm blue color or if there's murals on the wall. I mean, and to say, you know, that those things like will help people get better is just absolutely crazy. Like they're in a cage. So I would just, the primary purpose of jail is punishment, control, and surveillance. And this is just completely antithetical to mental health treatment and substance abuse goals. So I just really want to be clear about that. Your argument is weak. And not only is this antithetical to treatment goals, but it's also reinforcing mental health as a criminal matter, you know, by like sticking these two together. So I don't understand like the purpose of this committee, because you're kind of like talking about treatment, but most of you aren't really involved in treatment in this town. And I mean, I appreciated Jennifer Crossley's like comment today of just like bringing in those people. And then, yeah, you're just also planning a jail. So it doesn't make sense, in my opinion. So thank you.
And we have someone on Zoom, I believe. Well, okay.
Hello, good evening. Do you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
I'm
do.
Dave Jones. Dave Jones, a member of the community, fighting a little bit of COVID right now, so please bear with me. I'm also a member of the NAACP. Just a quick comment or two. I want to join with others who are in applauding the discussion of agenda item 2, treatment options. I'm very happy to see this very good discussion tonight. But I do want to observe that there was no specific reference or emphasis on the needs of juveniles who are in danger of becoming part of the justice system community, raising community justice concerns. And, you know, I thought of relating this to the INTERCEPT model. There's something very useful about the INTERCEPT model. There's something also kind of pessimistic about it, isn't it? Because I guess if you'll allow me, I want to suggest that maybe we think of steps before step 0, before INTERCEPT intercept step 0. And in particular, what I suggest is that when we think of treatments that are needed in our community, let's think about, I'm going to invite you or encourage you to think about treatments for youth who are in danger of becoming part of the community justice system. Let's add to our thinking about necessary treatments and programs, ones that perhaps provide alternatives for youth who might otherwise find themselves in trouble. Let's find ways of diverting them from this system at a very young age, at a younger age, so that they don't become the many of the people that we're talking about right now. Intercept steps less than 0, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you. And, oh, I'm sorry, it's past 6 now. And yeah, we're going to need to cut it off now. If you would like to come back at another time, we should be able to. I was watching.
I would make a motion just to include just these last 3 speakers. I mean, I know we all have places to go and things like that, but I also know I want to be respectful of community time and input as well. So if you sat here I mean, I think that would be perfect.
Come on, guys, come. We got 3 minutes. My name is Nicole Siegel. I'm also with Care Not Cages. This is a group made up of local residents who understand how damaging jail is and how important it is to make sure the fewest possible members of our community have to spend time there. We're here to ask primarily why the county and the CRJC in particular have not followed up on the most obvious and promising recommendation of the Ken Ray report, which the county itself commissioned to estimate the costs of renovating the existing facility. Why have you not taken this basic step? I also want to ask what budgetary provisions you're making for paying back the interest, which will be a regular annual cost for 30 or 50 years of the bond, and what other provisions you're making for paying back the capital when that bond comes due in 30 or 50 years, or are we going to endlessly defer this down to the next generations?
Hi, I'm Bryn Thomas. I'm also with Care Not Cages. I'm here to raise concerns about the land and the location. It doesn't seem like there is a clear plan yet flesh out for co-locating the services or moving all the infrastructure around the jail to this new location. Furthermore, jail is already isolating, and putting them out from the center of the community already isolates people even more. Also, the county has not provided a clear plan of how transit for families to this new jail location would work. And also the environmental study has not been completed, and there's concerns about the buildability of the site due to water runoff. So I'd like to see that study completed before the purchase is finalized.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Seth Muchler. Thank you for accommodating this sort of lightning round of public comment. I will keep mine very brief. Actually, I have many thoughts on this topic, but I will plan on actually just emailing the committee with my public comment. I will, to respect your time, try to keep it to the written equivalency of 3 minutes. But I do hope that you will all read that email and give it the same concern that you would for a verbal public comment. So I will plan to do that, and maybe anybody else who did not get time can do the same.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say that this is a very long and detailed process, and we meet once every 2 weeks, and we don't really anticipate solving all problems within a year or so. This is going to take quite a while. There's a great deal that it encompasses because we have been told we need a jail. That's been kind of the focus, but we never intended for it to be the focus. The committee was actually formed before it became clear that we were going to have to do something about the jail. So I just want to say that please keep paying attention and we will keep on slogging forward. Thank you. And this meeting is adjourned. Pardon? Oh, Courtney, did you get any responses to